Welcome back to Big Brave Business. I'm your host, Sarah K. Heater. Big Brave Business is a podcast where we challenge the status quo of traditional business practices. So if you're ready to challenge norms, rewrite the rules, and redefine what it means to lead with courage and integrity, then grab a notebook and let's dive in. Welcome back to Big Brave Business. This is a fun conversation today that we're going to have. I'm excited to learn more. So my guest today and I met at an event I've talked a lot about on this podcast, BU Brand Live, and she came to me and she said, hey, so-and-so said we need to meet. And I kind of want to talk to you about like nonprofits. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're doing this on Big Brave Business. This is definitely a conversation I want to have. So I'm excited to introduce you to Paulaska S. Ramirez. She's an exceptional leader and advocate who has dedicated her life to making a positive impact on the lives of first-generation women. As the founder and executive director of Generation Fearless, she has set out to transform the experiences of first-generation women, helping them navigate the complexities of life with confidence and resilience. As a first-generation Latina, she knows firsthand the challenges and uncertainties that come with navigating college, grad school, relationships, and adulthood without a point of reference. Her own journey has shaped her into a beacon of hope and guidance for others facing similar hurdles. She has over 14 years of experience in higher education. She's dedicated herself to working with students from diverse backgrounds, particularly those from low-income households. Her impact extends far beyond traditional education. She has a wealth of experience spearheading and facilitating educational and social workshops, training sessions, and one-on-one initiatives. Her focus areas span personal development, leadership, culture and identity, and career planning. And in each of these domains, she offers innovative solutions to strengthen diversity, inclusion, and cultural competencies. Paulaska serves as a powerful voice and advocate, shedding light on the disparities and inequities experienced by members of her community, driving change and empowerment. You were basically made to be a guest on this podcast. Welcome to Big Brave Business, Paulaska.
Thank you for having me. Super excited. I've listened to so many episodes, and then when I got,
You.
yes, I have. So when somebody, Gabby, had said, "Hey, you need to meet with her, go walk over," and I was like, "But her stuff is always about business." So that's, are you a nonprofit? And you were like, "Why not?" So I was so excited. So it's such an honor to be here with you today.
Yeah, and I think let's just start there. So when it comes to everybody who's listening to this is a leader in business of some kind, right? And I think most people tend to lean towards the entrepreneurship space. When my former co-host and I started this podcast, we really were focused on entrepreneurship. And I thought when I took it over solo, that I wanted to do just kind of leadership in business in general. But there are lots of different kinds of business entities. And I think that a lot of people in this space who would be interested in this content that we talk about are coming at this mission driven, passionate about helping people, serving people, giving back to their communities. And so, I guess in your own personal experience, can we start with like, how did you decide when you were thinking about, I have this mission, I want to start something, how did you decide to go nonprofit rather than LLC or S-Corp? What made you choose nonprofit?
I think so. I had the thought of Generation Fearless and something of that probably maybe 3 to 5 years prior to saying, "Hey, I'm hunkering down and I'm going to do this." But for me, it was thinking that I wanted to create something that was going to live beyond me, that was going to be in a way for the people and still maintained by the people. And not that that can't happen with business, but I think the mission is always different with business, right? No matter what you want it to be, revenue is at the core. And we're seeing much more, like you're saying, mission-driven organizations and trying not to do that. But there are bottom lines, there are KPIs, there's things that need to be kept. And not that that doesn't happen in the nonprofit world, right? And I'm learning that, right? Our organization is 5 years old, and I keep being told, you need to run it like a business. Don't forget that it's a business. I feel like it's back to college when I'm in a sorority, and it's, hey, this is a business, right? And you have to run it as a business. It's the same kind of thing. But for me, when I did a little bit of the research of doing an LLC, or doing a partnership or all of that, for me, it was reading the definition of what a nonprofit was, right? It doesn't belong to me. Yes, I am the founder and executive director, and I am proud, and it is my first baby, right? And I am the driving force because it came from my head, but it's not supposed to stay with me, right? It is a team of women that I get the pleasure of working with to drive it, but the goal is that we are expanding as an international organization, that Generation Fearless can have this impact and build community and outlive Paulaska in a way that will change generations, right? That 20, 30, 40, but 100 years from now, there is still a remnant of Generation Fearless creating impact and community for first generation women across the world. So for me, when I thought of nonprofit in that major impact, that's what it made more sense to do.
Can you explain a little bit more? Because honestly, I don't know the answer to this. What is the difference? So you're the founder and executive director, I think that's what you said. So no one owns it. Is that correct?
Technically, no one owns a nonprofit. The nonprofit is of the community, is of the people. So, yes, you're running it, right? And I'm the executive director, but technically the board is who we're still so small at 5 years. And because we don't have the large major funding, but the board is what runs the organization, right? So, yes, I lead our meetings and reporting out on meetings that I've had and different things like this podcast. How are we getting the word out and how are we connecting with women? But it is technically the board grounding us in our values and our missions that moves the agenda. It is not, and revenue and all these things are important, right? Again, this is where our challenge is as a small organization, because right now everything is funded by myself and my board, right? And small donations that we get because we're not there yet. And then because of the type of nonprofit I think that we are, when you're looking at our mission, we are providing generational healing and transformation for first generation women. But I don't think that realistically, when you compare that in a pool, and I was talking to somebody else, and I was like, when we're applying for a grant and they are only able to provide three recipients, and you have something related to kids, something related to veterans, something related to hunger, we're not the organization that is going to get the funds, even though, right? They're going to give it to the animals, they're going to give it to something else. So we've been struggling in that space. And for us, it's building these corporate relationships a little bit differently, working with business owners, the people that understand the mission, that have a direct impact and value in order to be able to continue and grow.
Yeah, I think this is so interesting because I feel like when I started my business, it didn't even occur to me that I should consider nonprofit as an option. And part of it, I think, has to do with the circumstances under which I started. It's not that I never thought about starting a nonprofit in life. Like I definitely had thought of that in the past for different things that I felt passionate about. And there is part of me that sort of has this vision or thought for myself. And Big Brave Business is a big part of that, of what does the next chapter look like for me after Podfox, or after this, what this season of Podfox looks like, what comes next for me after this? Because I don't think I'll be the CEO of Podfox until I die, right? I think there is a next chapter. And so part of me has kind of thought, well, if I could build this company to a point that I could sell it, then after I sell it, I can do the things that I feel more like the work I was put on this earth to do. Then I'll have the resources already sorted out, and I can spend time like volunteering and giving back to my community. And maybe I'll start a nonprofit, or maybe I'll just work for nonprofits or support nonprofits or whatever, depending on how much of the resources I'll really get from hopefully one day selling the company. Obviously, when I started my company, I did not go into it thinking I'm going to build a company to sell it. I literally was thinking, I don't want to go interview for other jobs. I don't want to go work for someone else again. I don't want to go, I was going through a corporate layoff and I didn't want to go through that experience again. And so it was like, well, I'll start my own thing and I just need to pay my bills. And so I looked up, like, in my state, what do you need to do to start making money from people? And it was like, in Arizona, as a sole proprietor, you can literally just start collecting money and use your social security number as your EIN, which, if that feels a little in the weeds, or if you're like, I don't know if that's true in my state. It does vary. But I think that for me, it literally was like, I just need to be able to get people to pay me so that I can pay my bills. And very quickly, I knew that wasn't a long term sustainable solution. It needed to have a mission in order for me to care, right? Like, I needed to be able to be clear that there's a reason why this work matters and that it's not just doing more work that I don't care about, which is kind of what my corporate career looked like. So, with all of that being said, I think that a big part of the reason I never personally considered a nonprofit is because the circumstances under which I started my business was literally just, okay, I need to make money. So what do I need to do to start making money? And then once I started making money for myself, it was like, okay, what does scalability look like for this? Right. So then that ultimately led to this path of, well, one day I'll sell it, and selling it obviously means I own it and then I will sell it. So that kind of makes sense why that was a natural journey for me. But it's interesting because one thing I have really considered, and you and I were talking about this before I hit record, is that I have been giving a lot more thought, particularly this year, of now that I have this really clear mission, we're talking about how the mission is and the core values are implemented in every stage of decision making in my company. So including offers, pricing, hiring, what does all of it look like? And I think that a nonprofit or a charitable like element to the business makes sense. I'm not entirely sure how that works or what that looks like, but I feel like there is something here that makes sense. And I know that there's big companies that have a foundation, right? I know PetSmart has PetSmart charities. I know famously, this is not like a heralded example, but Chick-fil-A has a foundation arm that they use for things that I don't ethically support, which is part of the reason why people don't want to support Chick-fil-A, the profit driven organization, because they
Correct.
know that some of that money is being funneled into causes they don't want to support that they're calling charity, right? Okay, so all of that to say, I know that this exists. So as I'm thinking about building a company, could an element of that exist for me? So that's part of why I just want to kind of give context, because I think that that's an interesting thought for anyone who's listening to this, whether you've thought about starting a nonprofit that's unrelated to your current company or even for your current company, like what could that look like? So I'm curious because when you say you run it like a business, I want to kind of drill into, so you can have offers and collect money, right? So I
Correct.
know I'm really involved with Girl Scouts. That's a nonprofit. I pay a membership fee to be part of it. I've paid to attend events. I've paid to participate in programming. So talk a little bit more, if you would, about how do you, and we were talking a little bit about this before we hit record, because there's definitely some nuance to this, but how do you create revenue generating activities as a nonprofit? What does that look like?
Well, and before that, I just wanted to say, I don't think that in the very beginning, I knew it was a feeling, right? And my feeling was that I wanted to change the world, as corny as it sounded, but I didn't think the scaling component, no different than it being a business, I didn't start saying that we were becoming an international organization until 2 years ago when I started working and doing more on a local. And then COVID shifted everything for us, right? We started in 2019 and no longer can do events. And I was thinking of our very first one was a paint and relax, right? Like, and us building community. And now we started in November, then it was March, right? We were still babies and having to do things online and connecting. And that's when it started happening, but seeing the impact of our relationship at community building was like, if we're doing this locally here, imagine if we were able to start like doing more. And we just came back from doing a wellness 3-day retreat in Miami. I never thought of doing that in the very beginning. We were fine with our 1-day retreats, making it work. But coming back to what you're asking in regards to revenue, you need revenue, right? And that's the part that I, again, as a nonprofit, that wasn't how I started. I didn't think of it having to run it like a business or needing money. But in order to serve the woman that I want to serve, we need money in order to function. I can't pay for everything. My board cannot. And it is looking a lot of times the challenge that we have, which is what we were talking about earlier, is looking at the price point and who I am serving, right? If I am serving first generation women who traditionally are not in the same income tax bracket as others that are second, third generation and have access, if I'm looking at the intersectionality of many of our identities, right, when 60% of us are of color, you're looking at a lot of different challenges. And just looking at that, we have different responsibilities as first gen. It's not just for you. A lot of us are responsible for siblings, for parents. So I can't price something at $125. Like I can't do a one a day event. That's just something that I'm not comfortable doing because I'm like, who's going to be in the room? Is it going to be the woman that I'm really trying to serve? I mean, are there things that are more expensive? Of course, right? Our 3 day retreat had to be more money. It was 3 days. It cost us money. But I think pricing for us is always so important of looking at who we're trying to serve, but it does create some challenges when you don't have the money that's coming in. So I think that sometimes the difference is different with credit unions and things like that. The money that's coming into the organization is to serve the folks. And for its sustainability, it doesn't go into our pockets, right? It's not to create a profit margin of any sort. I think that's usually the biggest difference, right? If you are expanding and growing your business, it's because you want to be able to provide higher salaries for your folks, for yourself, or to be able to expand and have these numbers. For me, I need us to have money and expand so I can provide more programming, so I can provide more scholarship opportunities. And sometimes we've been very blessed. We did a 3 day institute and we had two organizations reach out and sponsor women to come. And if someone reaches out and says, I really want to attend your event and I don't have it, I'm going to let them come. We're going to figure it out, right? I am never going to have someone reaching out and saying, hey, I want to. But that does come at a cost when we have to feed folks, when we're looking at making sure. And I can't help it. I am like, I was speaking to we're planning a 1 day summit in Oregon in April, and then we're talking, and she's, "Are we going to feed them?" And I was like, "I'm not Dina. I have to." I was like, "I feel like my mother would come out." Yes, we have to give breakfast and lunch because you can't have people over. But these are things, right? Culture and all these other components to impact. So we're always looking at what I've been learning, right, is who I'm going to get money from, and is not the same people of who I am serving. And that is the big reality, right? When I'm looking at the revenue that needs to come in, our revenue needs to come in from more corporate donors, from businesses and organizations that are looking to do good, to believe in our mission, or if I'm honest, or sometimes looking for a tax cut and saying, hey, this is a donation. But if I can use that to serve the women that we have, if I can use those $500 and create another scholarship for an undergraduate young lady, that's fantastic. We just did our first scholarship last in May. Yes, and not in May, sorry, in October. And we were able to provide a small scholarship for a doctoral student who's first generation, about to be, I want to say that she's her degrees in counseling. So to me, that those are the things that are important. So it's just always challenging on how do we find the right partners in order to be sustainable. Because again, it depends on the mission. If you have something related to, not that we don't have a compelling story, but when I am competing with the poor puppies, the babies, the veterans, the elderly, first generation women, because it's still a niche identity for a lot of people who are people of power and have money, that's not going to be something that they're willing to give the funds. Because it's like, why is there a need? Well, because there's systemic barriers that put us behind. That's why, but people don't always get that.
There's a lot there to dig into, and one of the things I want to say is one of the phrases that you mentioned is that you are needing to make money in order to put it back into service and not to line your pockets. And I want to also reiterate here that people who work for nonprofits do and should get paid. There are a lot of
Absolutely.
volunteers, but part of the
Absolutely.
budget that you're balancing is also salaries for people, including the executive director who needs
Correct.
to get paid and
Yeah.
frankly deserves to get paid well, because you deserve to get paid a good wage for doing work that matters. And this is something that I want to specifically mention because I feel like in the spirit of conversations, people object to salaries for executive directors and other leaders in nonprofit and charitable organizations regularly, but they don't object to the astronomical salaries that corporate leadership gets. And I think to myself regularly, who deserves to get paid a well-to-do salary more than somebody leading a service organization like that? Of course you deserve to get paid. And I know that this is another thing. I've worked for a nonprofit in the past. I know that this is a thing that is tough where a lot of times people who do want to give money or contribute money, they want to do things like sponsor someone to come to an event. They don't want to pay your salary. And that's
And they will
interesting.
ask, not to cut you off, but like I had someone, again, we don't have as an organization, if you were to look like we're like, I think we just have $1,000 in our account. I am very, like, we do not have money, right? And I was speaking to someone because our speakers always have to be in kind. I don't have $3,000 to give a speaker, though they may be absolutely worth that and more. And we're transparent. Has nothing to do with your value, but this is where we are as an organization. And I usually have like people like understand, right? And we explain, I was like, we can show you books, we can show you. And I was speaking to someone and they're like, but you're charging for this event. So where's that money going? And it's okay, I can tell you. And I broke down, we have to pay for the food that we're going to give the folks. We still have to pay sometimes for the location if that's not being sponsored. We have to pay, but it was an immediate, well, I'm going to provide this. Why are you charging like $65 a ticket? Well, because we have to pay all these other things to make the event happen. But we don't ask corporate organizations why they're increasing a price the same way. It was an
Yeah.
immediate like, where's your money going? And it's just, well, we're all volunteer. And the dream for me is to, in Vegas, right? I wrote it down in my notebook. I want to do Generation Fearless full time, but to get the funding, and you're saying to be able to have a salary that's sustainable, I already put in 40 hours a week, right? I have my full-time job. I am
Mhm.
a mama. I run Generation Fearless full time with the help of volunteers who are also working full time. I'm a doctoral student. I've put in the work to make sure that the organization, again, small with no funding. And last year, well, this year we were in 3 different states. Next year, we're looking at again being at a state a quarter. We're talking about being hopefully in France next year. I don't think people understand the work that comes with that. And I do it because I love it. This is my first baby. But if I were to do it full time in order to have a larger impact, I would need a salary. But I already know the challenges because people are like, we question the 125 and we're not saying, hey, why is this executive director making this much? You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yes. I think that's something to consider too when we come at things from a philanthropic place, because statistically, and I know the majority of my listeners are women, but I know I also have non-binary listeners as well. I don't have a lot of statistics about non-binary giving, but I do know that women statistically do participate in philanthropy more
They
than
do.
men do. So I know also by the nature of the content that we're creating here, the people who listen to this podcast are the types of people who give, who have goals to make money so that they can give it away. And I think this is something that's really worth discussing and highlighting. My best friend works in donor relations and philanthropic giving in a lot of different nonprofits. She's done a lot of stuff and some consulting. And one of the big things that's like a mission on my heart, and I would love to spread it, is when you are in a position to donate money, ask to donate it to overhead. Ask for it to go to that, because so many people want to donate
Thank
so that
you.
they can see the pictures of the little kids in the program, or they can see the pictures of the puppies that they helped get it. But they
But
don't
that printing is
want it.
expensive.
What's going to keep the lights on in an
Correct.
office building? What's going to pay people's salaries so that they can give the hours to do the work? And I think that making that choice of, hey, I know this is something that you have to negotiate with donors, that to have anything cover overhead, so I would like to specifically compensate like that. If that helps you negotiate a lower overhead rate with a major donor who's going to fund a program, because I was able to supplement that overhead for that gift, like, then I would like to be part of that giving, right? And I think that that's really human first. That's really people centered. And that's so much of what we talk about on Big
100%.
Brave Business. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to really mention that. Hey, P.S., people who run nonprofits do and should get paid. Like, they
Yeah.
should get paid. They don't
Yeah.
need to be billionaires, because no one needs to be a billionaire, but they
Yeah.
deserve to be paid. So
Yeah.
I think, and the work is good and the work's important. And if you believe the work is good and the work is important, then shouldn't that person get paid for their time?
Absolutely.
Yes, they should.
Absolutely.
So yeah, but that is, I think that's a tough sell. One thing that I think is interesting about nonprofits, and you kind of tapped into this a little bit, is that from a business perspective, there are some grants that are available, especially if you have like specific identities or if you're working toward a goal or a mission that is something like that a governmental organization has maybe annual or 5-year mission that they're working toward or something. If you can make a prove a connection or something, then sometimes there's some grants, but certainly funding for nonprofits can and needs to be a lot more creative. So whereas for running a more traditional business, we're thinking about, I'm going to create a service and I need the person who's getting that service to pay me for it. A nonprofit can also do that. And they're also going to have opportunities to create all kinds of other opportunities for funding. So, what are some of the ways, and I understand it's not easy, I'm not trying to paint a rosy picture, but
No,
what are some
no.
of the ways that a nonprofit can get funding toward their budget? Like, where does the money come from other than here's an offer, pay for it?
I think for us, it's community and relationship building, right? I think a lot for us, the money comes in kind, right? It comes in us building a relationship and saying, hey, I need to be able to use your space. And I can't pay $5,000 for a space. And saying, hey, but you know what I mean? You can. And it's bartering to a certain extent, right? Of boom, we're able to use your space, but you can have members of your community attend at a discount rate, or you can have 5 people attend. You're able to, like, I think we're walking around like sponsorship packages all the time of, hey, this is a something that I need and I don't have the funds to this. And that, I think for me specifically when I'm speaking to folks, is making clear that it's not that we're undervaluing either someone's space or product or service. It is that we don't have the funds to pay for it, right? We're not a big nonprofit that has money coming in from big donors. We don't have big grants. And this is who and how it's going to serve, right? So it's, hey, can I use your space because we're going to do it? Can you speak? And you're speaking directly to our population. Let me tell you who's in the room. And hopefully it may lead to something, right? And I think that we've been blessed enough to connect women in ways that we didn't think was going to bloom into something great, right? Or more business for them or anything like that. But I think a lot of the time is that, and even our very first, if I can go back to like our very first 1 day retreat that we did at a local university, one of our board members' mom cooked. We didn't have the relationships yet. We didn't have the money. So we were able to get the space. We were able to get the speakers. And it was, okay, how are we gonna feed these folks? Okay. So my mama is a baker, so my mommy is making a cake. She makes a cake out of everything. Somebody's mom was able to, is using your community and your resources, people that fully understand, in order to get products, in order to get things, in order to have to make the program come to life, right? And it is working collaboratively. I can't do anything if I am not working with community, who I am trying to serve anyway, right? With other first generation women that are looking for speaking opportunities. And we're the safe space for you to come and speak. I mean, I need speakers, but I also want to give them the platform. So it ends up working. We want to grow the organization. So specifically when I'm speaking to Alondra, who's amazing in Oregon, it's just like, no, I was serious. We want to go there. Let's start planning. How can we serve that population, but also give her more exposure and us more exposure? How can we work together of finding who are your resources, who's in your network, who's in mine, and then being able to build. So I think it's a lot of that. It's being creative on who do you know? And being bold, right? Being brave and bold. I have no problem slipping into somebody's DM and saying, hope and praying that, hey, can I have a coffee date? I just want to share about the organization. Or coming to Vegas and being in spaces. And sometimes people are saying, like, what are you looking for? What are you selling? I'm not selling anything. I'm not looking for anything but to build relationship. I just want to know who these amazing women are because I also want to be the connector. If I have people in my network that need something that I can say, hey, remember like we met here and I have a woman that needs these services and this is part of her either identities or challenges. So hopefully there's a consideration in pricing or support in whatever way. So that's just kind of how we're making it work.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. So, for someone who is listening and they're thinking, okay, I have a business, I've been super business focused about thinking of this more in traditional business terms, but Sarah said she has an idea for what a nonprofit or charitable aspect of her company could look like. I don't even know where I would start in that. What as somebody who is coming from a nonprofit frame of mind, how would you, I have my own thoughts, but I want to hear from you first. Like, how would you approach thinking about what you can do to build a nonprofit or charitable, like, I don't know, version, extension, addition, addition to the house that is your business?
Well,
Where do you
I think it's focusing on where you're already doing it because I think if that's a thought, it's because it's already happening or you're not doing it to the scale and the capacity that you want to. And I think when someone's really thinking about that, it is that it's like, hey, I want to serve in this aspect, but my business doesn't allow me to provide free services because there's a level of sustainability that needs to, or I can't provide it at a discount rate, or I can't do X, Y, and Z. So I would say jump, right? But jumping with understanding most nonprofits don't make it after year three, right? Because of the work and the limited funding, because everybody talks about there's all these grants, there's all this, but everyone is looking to applying for them. And for us, if you don't have a grant writer, if you don't want to have someone that looks for grants, and that is a full-time job. They get paid what they get paid for a reason because it is a lot of work. The very small grants that we've gotten have been a lot of work on us in addition to everything else. So I think it's creating your business plan no different that you create it for your business is creating that for your nonprofit and making sure that I would use the same model. What are your KPIs? You know what I mean? What are those areas that you want to impact and what does impact look like? And if you got no money, then can the house really support the garage? Because you also don't want to start with a hope and a prayer that funding is going to come, because I think a lot of times people make it sound like, oh, there's so much money and something that you can't sustain. And starting small and realistic. I think, again, for us, we're at year five. Year one, I didn't think of doing anything out of state or international. It wasn't sustainable. Even now, we're looking, okay, we need an online platform to create community. People have been telling me to do this for years. We didn't have the community or the resources to do that year one and two. Now at year five, yes, now I need to connect Florida to Jersey and Jersey to France and France to Portland. And now it makes sense, right? But that expense then didn't make sense. So I think it's looking at what you're trying to really do, starting small, become good at that, and providing that one service. So even if you just start with, I provide pro bono services to 10 clients a year, that's enough. And then, okay, year two, okay, I'm able to create a scholarship or donate my time, because I think that's a bigger impact than how I've seen some, not just in business, but organizations start, you jump out super big and then you can't sustain and then you can't do the good that you really wanted to do. So if you just started helping two nonprofits, right, set off their podcast, that's huge. You can do that in a year. That would be amazing to have two organizations get their word and their stories out there. And then the year after you want to help, I don't know, high school or whatever it is, or moms, you can expand from there. But I think it's doing that realistically.
Yeah, I love that you said you should look at what you're already doing, and I think that that is such good advice, especially for what you went on to say about the sustainability piece, because if you're already doing it, then what work that you're already doing or wanting to do that could fit into your current business model could be classified under a different designation. And I think some of the ways that I would figure out what's the difference here is what aspects of what you do or what you offer do you struggle with pricing because you feel like people have a right to this? Like what
Yes.
where
Yes.
and this was a question that came up in the room and I don't remember who asked it, so hopefully it wasn't you, but if so, hey, I'm going to talk about it at BU Brand Live. Someone had asked that they were struggling with pricing services. No, I know it wasn't you. I actually remember who it was. They were struggling with pricing services because they felt like they wanted to give this information away for free, but then also they need to get paid. And what I wished I could tell that person, because it's not the answer that was given from the stage, but what I wish I could tell that person, my 2 cents, is that what you're struggling with is the difference between the service you deserve to get paid for and the part of the information that you don't want to gatekeep because you believe it's a human right that
Yeah.
would make the world a better place if more people had it. So the difference between those two things,
Yes.
like for me as running a company that's podcast production and strategic consultation, for full service podcast production, that's a service, man. Like you're gonna pay for it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's pretty, and honestly it's kind of a high ticket service, like it, depending on how you define high ticket. So
Yeah.
like that is true. But my belief that your voice matters, my belief that you have a message to say that can impact the world, that can impact communities, that can impact your industry, my belief that you have the right to use that voice, my belief that if you had the information to build your own platform to use that voice, because I genuinely believe that your voice matters, that's human right. Right. That's
Absolutely.
where the charitable nonprofit angle for me feels really clear. And one of the things you and I talked about before I hit record is that I kind of have this vision. So, yes, one of the things we do at Podfox is we help people secure sponsorships that help fund their podcast. And honestly, right there, that already tells you like anything that you're like, oh, I could solicit sponsorships for this has actually a potential to maybe fit into this kind of nonprofit vision you have, because the same story you're approaching sponsors with of, hey, here's why you should give me money to fund this, that's kind of the same journey you would do in a nonprofit. So that could potentially
That's
be
the
looked
same
at.
exact thing. Absolutely.
Same skill set, same approach, same storytelling, same like donor engagement. It's the same kind of look. So that might be related. But I think that when we talk about helping people look for sponsors, one of the big things that we stress is getting sponsorships from people who align with your core values, someone you would be comfortable promoting to your podcast audience, somebody who adds value to your podcast audience. It feels relevant. A, that's going to make it easier for that person to say yes to giving, but B, it's going to make it's going to maintain your trust with the community that you're serving. However, some of the corporations and entities that have the most money to give don't align with our values. So part of what you and I were talking about
Yes.
before we hit record is like, part of my vision for this nonprofit arm is that most of the people that I work with probably wouldn't want to be sponsored by Walmart. However, Walmart is looking to offload money for tax cuts. So if they were willing to donate money to help fund a grant that I could create
Yeah.
that could then support amplifying underrepresented voices in the form of podcasting,
Yes.
then I can help redistribute that wealth in a way that matters and aligns with my mission, right? So I think Walmart doesn't have to be the one supporting my client's mission. They are willing to fund my mission to help amplify underrepresented voices. And I will gladly take their money and put it in the pockets of people who are trying to do revolutionary work by using their voices, right? So that's how it kind of came up for me. That's kind of how it made sense for me is, hey, the people who have the money to pay for these services are not always the people whose voices I want to help amplify. How do I balance that? And so for me, that's part of what makes sense. Another thing you mentioned is like scholarships and subsidizing the cost. So a lot of people do sliding scale services, like you pay what you can. And
Hmm.
if you are somebody who approaches business this way, then that's an indicator that there could be a
Correct.
good fit for a so I think the things that you said of what are you already doing or what do you already want to do, what are some ways we can find ways to give or be not just charitable but also just be mission driven, service oriented humans that
Yeah.
are accommodating our offers to be trauma informed and DEI oriented. And listen, there are populations that we care about serving. And I've had a soapbox even about pricing of, if we all only offer high ticket services for millionaires, then most of us can't afford to get any services. There have to
Correct.
be offers that exist for people who aren't seven-figure business owners. So
Yes.
what exists for those people? And if you care about serving those people, which maybe you don't, but if you care about serving those people, which is like everyone else, which is most
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
Then how how do you create an offer and price it accordingly so that you can serve people and still get paid? And I think this is kind of all comes back to the same thing.
I agree 1,000%. And I think it's being creative, right? You want to do more, you can't. But if you offer, I don't know, individual work, maybe as the nonprofit, you did the scale, but as the business, but as a nonprofit, you offer group sessions, right? Because you're serving a bigger group of folks that have the need, and you do it at $5 because you're still doing one session. You get 25 people, you get five people, you'll be able to still make it sustainable
Yeah.
compared to, because I think that's the most important part is making sure that you're doing things that are going to be around in order to continue to have the impact. And if it looks too big and too much, we can't do, right? That is a reality when you have all the expenses and the responsibilities. But if you're already doing it and you already just want to expand this a little bit, and you're like, I can do this for a year, and then after that, because if the money is coming, and then the team, then you get volunteers, then you get more folks, and you're able to expand. But look at how are you already giving? How are you already supporting this component?
Yeah.
And then jump and make it like official. Because if you're able to get the funds for that component of your business, right? Then maybe you're able to offer even more, because then that's also then a different space of
Yeah.
revenue.
For anyone listening who is first generation, who is interested in connecting with you and learning, of course, we're going to link stuff in the
Yeah.
description. Of course, we're doing that. But what are some ways people can get involved or connected to the work that you're doing with Generation Fearless for people who do belong to this community?
I think first is going on our website, right? Generationfearless.org, and looking at what is coming up. And next year we're growing, right? We're entering our full year 5. I am so proud of the work that we are doing and expanding, right? Because I want to create, and I've said this, and I'm always plain spoken. I said what I said. I want to create the white man's network for first generation women. I want to create the network that everyone has in regards to, hey, I need support, and there's someone that's going to provide the support with no strings, no nothing, just because we are part of this community, right? And I understand what it is to be without. I understand what it is to be in a space and be lost and not know. And to be able to say, hey, I'm in a room, and you know what? Sarah would be great for this. Let me connect you. Let me call Sarah. Not because I'm going to get anything from it, but because I know your greatness, and I want to make sure that someone else knows that. And that we remind first generation women that they are worthy, that they don't need a million and one things added to a resume or to know that they are worth everything and some.
Mhm.
So if someone's looking to connect us, going on our website. This in Jersey, we have a couple things happening. We have a great relationship with Fairleigh Dickinson University, so we'll be there in February for Black History Month, connecting with them and bringing in a phenomenal speaker and private dinner, Dr. Stephanie Kirkland. In March, we're having a panel for Women's History Month and being able to highlight some of the amazing things that first generation women are doing across different sectors. In April, we'll be in Portland, Oregon with our Thrive and Transform Summit. May, we have our 1-day retreat back in New Jersey, in Teaneck. What else am I thinking? We are going back to having our wellness retreat in Florida in October. And there's a lot of other things that we're adding to our planning retreat, our fearless conversations that we have usually virtually. We're going to have some in person. But I'm always telling women, if there is a need that you have, call us. We do academic career coaching. We have our fearless conversations. We have our specific programs, but what we have is community. And sometimes I've had women reach out like, this might sound crazy, but I just need a thought partner. Let's call me. Let's talk about it. And sometimes it's about relationships and being bicultural and being first gen American, and how are you navigating the responsibilities of being Latina or from different African descent, or navigating being Muslim and these cultural expectations. And let's talk about it. It's, hey, how do I move forward in my business? And I am scared of X, Y, and Z. Or how do I walk into spaces that aren't built for us? And us being women, women that are first gen, women of color, low income, in this intersectionality of our identity. So see what's happening on our website. We're having some updates. But if you're like, hey, I provide a service and I want to donate my time, or hey, I want a platform and I think that your woman would benefit from this, let's talk, because we're in the space of serving. So yeah, and we're also on LinkedIn and Instagram, but our website is what has the most information.
Love that. Thank you. And last question, this is how I like to end all of these conversations, and that is it can be work related, but it does not have to be. What is something that is bringing you joy right now?
Oh my God. I think I'm in a space of, I'm 38. I'm of finally feeling that I'm figuring out Pulaska, but I'm where I belong and doing the work that I need to do. And that is bringing me joy because the Generation Fearless brings me so much joy. I have a baby boy who will be 2 in February. And I have a bonus son who'll be 13 in December. Been seeing them grow and growing as their mother. I'm an only child, daughter of an only child, and being able to the shift that's happening in my relationship with my mom as she's getting older, but now me as a mom, but being able to offer her experiences that she never thought she could have. She came with us to our wellness retreat. I was able to take her to Disney. Those things are bringing me joy of being more grounded in the woman that I am and doing the work that I think is so important for our communities, but for my immediate family. It's a beautiful space to be in. And it's challenging, don't get me wrong. I cry and pray, and that's how I get through most of the challenges. But it's bringing me joy to see the ripple effect from my house to across state lines.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I've never had a guest, especially a woman. Well, I mean, I've never had any guest, but say that the thing that's bringing them joy essentially is their age. And I think that's a really beautiful perspective. And it's one that I have said in my own life, not on this podcast, is that I remember when I turned 30, now it's been a minute, but when I turned 30, I remember saying I was so excited because like most people have and I did kind of have an existential crisis, but
Of
a
course.
lot of people have that. But I also felt like I was meant to be in my 30s. That's what I had said at the time. And now I'm looking like you, I'm looking ahead into my 40s and I'm thinking, I can't wait to meet the version of me in my 40s. Like I've loved being in my 30s. Definitely been my favorite of my 4 decades so far, but now I'm like, ooh, what's the fifth one look like? That sounds fun. So I love that perspective. Something that's bringing me joy right now is okay. I don't know if this will still be true when this comes out, but I hope I stick to it. So we're recording this in November. It's gonna air in the beginning of February. So excited to be like batched ahead with all these great interviews. But so that's one thing that's bringing me joy is that I do not need to record podcast episodes during the holidays. That's great.
Yes.
But in addition, I deleted Facebook from my phone. So I did not delete my account. There's years and years and years and years of history in there and I don't want to lose what's there, but it was not serving my
Mm,
wellness at this
girl.
point. So I deleted it from my phone. Now I do have two Facebook accounts. I have a Facebook account that's more scrubbed, that's used primarily for work. And then I have a Facebook account that's personal. I deleted the app altogether from my phone, but from the computer, I am officially logged into a browser in my work one. So I could open that at any point. But from my phone, we've removed the app and I still have social media on my phone, but not Facebook specifically. I swear my blood pressure has come down. My headspace is clearer. Like nothing good was happening for me on Facebook post election. Not the least of which is that it was a place that I was dumping my thoughts and emotions in real time. And although I do think that there's value in clearing that out and in finding community with other people and in creating community with other people, there are people who may not have had the words that came to me, but felt seen and validated and heard. I was connecting with people in the comments of those posts of people who needed what I needed. And I don't know that social media is a place to serve as your personal journal. I don't think there maybe take
I agree.
time to process your thoughts and feelings and determine what you really need to share with the world and why you need to share it before you just type it out in with thumbs of
Call a
fury.
friend is what
So
I think. If
yeah,
you need to get it off your chest, that there, call a friend. Yes.
yeah, and posting on Facebook is not the same as calling a friend. It is not an equivalent.
Correct. It is
So
not.
I think that's not the least of reasons why I deleted it, but definitely it's up there. And also just some people who are family members who I will always be connected to it to some degree, and even unfriending it, it's not that simple, right? So there are people who I was not feeling a sense of community with in
Mm,
that space. And it just was raising my blood pressure. Every time I would pick up my phone, I would check it and I could feel it in my body. And
physically.
yeah, so to the point where I had to start leaving my phone downstairs when I would go up to bed, and not even don't take your phone to bed with you, but I didn't even have it on the same floor as me in order to try to sleep. Like it was not serving me. So since I deleted the app, feeling very refreshed.
Good. We got to keep the phone downstairs, keep the app off and the phone downstairs.
So we're making progress. So I think that's a really big mental health step for me. There were a lot of reasons why I held on to Facebook with dying grip as the ship was going down, but I think, you know what, we gotta, I say all the time, stop spending time in places that make you feel like shit with people who make you feel like shit. And if Facebook has become that for you, then let me encourage you, you don't have to delete your account, just log out, delete the app. That's
Yeah.
it's fine. So anyways, that's where I'm at right now. That's something, it's weird thing to say that's bringing me joy, but yeah, it is. Yeah, it really is. So we'll see by the time this episode comes out if it's still true. It's still deleted. Thank you so, so much for being here, for joining me for this conversation, Paulaska. Thank you for the work that you're doing and the people that you're serving, and especially with all the other amazing things you have going on in your life, personally, professionally,
Thank you.
academically, to make time and space in your life to serve others. It's a really beautiful thing. So and I know it's also thankless. So let me take a moment to thank you and to recognize the effort and the work that you do and the good that you're doing in the world. And the world is a better place with you in it. So thank you for that. And thank you for being here and joining me for this convo.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And thank you for giving so many of us a platform, right? To be able to talk about what is important to us and giving so many of us the space to share why and how. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, it is truly my pleasure. Like I went out of having these conversations, but okay, to you listening, thank you so much for being here as well. And we'll see you next week.